It's time for AI News, brought to you by AI8W Podcast.
So we have this kind of middle break where we go through some of our personalized, if we call it that, or similarity-based kind of news favorites. And I
What's
guess
the news for the week?
Yeah, this week is hard.
Subjective from us.
It's one topic that I think tops
One
them all.
topic shadows everything else, maybe.
But perhaps anyone that wants to go first. Do you have a some kind of favorite news article?
I mean, all of the news articles have been about Gemini, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and it's about it seems to perform at least a little bit better than GPT-4. So far, nothing has been released, especially not in EU, and nothing is released in any other languages than English. Ultra, I think, will come. The biggest version of Gemini, Ultra, I think, will come first next year. So there is a little bit kind of...
So there's this hype now. This is like expectation sales. We've seen all that Google has dropped in terms of examples and stuff like that, but no one has really put their hands on it yet.
And I think what is really interesting is, so yes, we have all those benchmarks, right? And we have, it seems like it performs better than GPT-4. But will people actually feel that it does? I think a lot of people have gotten used to now ChatGPT, and it's rather kind of chatty experience, the chatty output. You get very long answers, and in those long answers, you might actually find the answer that you're looking for. And I think that it's not just about the benchmarks, right? But it's also about like how do you use this as a user?
Should we just perhaps give a background first
Yeah.
on Gemini? Hopefully
why is
we
it
have
a big
at least
deal and
one
all that?
other article.
I
as
have a
well.
couple of news, but let's start with the Gemini news. I think that's good.
Should I start and just
Go
give,
for it.
Okay, so
We're gonna fight for the mic on this one, I think.
yes,
You start.
probably do. I mean, just the basics of it. Of course, ChatGPT has been on all the news, and they have been leading in the field of large language models for some time since OpenAI released it for more or less exactly 1 year, or 1 year and a couple of weeks. And now this week, Google, a bit ahead of time. I think it was planned to be released early next year, but they now released Gemini. And Gemini is another large language model that is also very multimodal. So I think that's one of the key benefits that they add, and they claim it's been trained from the start to be multimodal. So they cannot only understand and generate text, but actually understand and generate audio and images and video in a way that I think is really impressive. And
But the big deal here, isn't it that it's been built multimodal ground up? So it's not like bolting coding and audio on top or visuals on top, but they actually, the whole architecture is multimodal, which means they have worked on it for some time, obviously.
Yeah, and if we compare it to GPT-4, we know they added GPT-4 V for vision recently, like an add-on later on. So obviously it wasn't trained for that to start with, and they added that later. But in reality, what they really did with Gemini is still, hard to say, because they haven't really released some, details. They had a technical paper that spoke a bit about it, but it was very shallow. It didn't include much details at all. But yes, that is truly what they do claim, that it was trained for multimodality to start with. And I think that is truly one of the more impressive things. So one example I saw was they could take like someone having a piece of paper and a pen, a human is writing with a pen on a paper the figure or picture of a guitar. And Gemini is looking at that and saying, it's a guitar. But at the same time, it's also having an audio output where it makes the sound of a guitar. So that's awesome. And then he writes another like amplifier next to the guitar, and suddenly said, it's a guitar with an amplifier, and suddenly it's an electric guitar, and it's had another audio output that also is sounding awesomely. So it's generating now electric guitar with an amplifier music that is, created from scratch. And then it adds a drum, basically, like a picture, handwritten picture of a drum. And suddenly, now we have the electric guitar with an amplifier and a drum and music that sounds awesome. And it's like AI-generated music with just writing or drawing some pictures. So I think this really captures one of the amazing things that this model can do that's never been possible before, to truly understand images and also understand audio and generate text, audio, and images in a way that is truly impressive.
And if this is true now, it really feels like real-time conversation. There's very little lag and all that. We don't know how that is in reality, but it's very, those examples they've posted are fluent. They're super nice in that sense.
And just to give some technical details, I mean, it were claiming in the technical report to be a 32,000 context window. So it's less than the biggest GPT-4 and Claude and others that have hundreds of thousands of context window. But still, it's semi-good. It's what actually GPT-4 had, I think, in the larger version with 32K. Also, they had like 3 versions of it. It's one Ultra, one Pro, and one Nano version. So... right?
Yeah, the nano version is really... Oh, there are 2 nano versions, I think. It's like one with roughly 1 billion.
8, I think.
Yeah, and then one with 3 or 4 billion.
Yeah, with 3, I think.
And the idea with those is that they're supposed to run in your smartphone. And I think I actually like where this is going, and I like that Google is kind of...
Figured this out from the beginning. They have 3 sizes for different for courses.
But also, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, you're always going to have quite a large latency, right? I mean, if you're using if you're using the API, I mean, do you know how long the latency is for GPT-4 API? It's
what is it? Do you know?
12 seconds on average. And then there's a GPT 3.5 Turbo. So Turbo is obviously really fast, right? It's 3 seconds. So it's really, really long. I mean, as a user, 3 seconds is actually really long if you're waiting for something to load. Now, if you're running something locally on your smartphone, it's going to be much, much faster. And I think it's interesting that they're realizing that, there's a lot of potential in these small models. Yes, they may not be as accurate, they may not be as capable, but they're going to be really fast. And I'm really curious about what that's going to happen, what it's going to do with the smartphone industry.
When they have now figured out multimodality from scratch and these fundamentally different architectures depending on size and how you can use it, it really opens up that depending on your use case, it's quite obvious. This is a nano use case. The speed, the interaction, the flow in this more narrow space, that's what you need. And then, so I think it's so, I mean, like when you see it, it's obvious that's how it should be done, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think OpenAI and a lot of other companies as well are kind of focus on making bigger and bigger models, right? And I mean, yes, they're getting more and more capabilities and they're getting more and more accurate, but they're also getting a lot more expensive and the latency is a lot higher. And there's no easy way of solving this, right? I mean, we've seen OpenAI trying to, they're cutting down the accuracy a little bit in order to save some cost, which makes a lot of sense. But it also creates a less of a good user experience. If you then have the expectation that, yes, now I'm using the smartphone model, for example, it's going to be fast. Yeah, it doesn't cost me anything. It runs my phone, right? But it's, it's something that I can use. It's not an API. Obviously, the user is not going to care if it's an API or not, but still.
I think it's great that they actually do consider the engineering aspects of this, what you can use it for, what value it actually can provide, and not having like a trillion parameter model running in a closed setting somewhere where you have to use an API, but actually having it embedded potentially in your phone. And they are going to put it in the Pixel 8 apparently. So it's going to be, or more or less are already part of existing phones, which is amazing. So, do
you know what they're going to use it for?
No.
No, me neither. I'm just curious.
That sounded like you knew something we didn't know.
Sorry. No, I wish.
And is this the time when I now need to switch out my iPhone to a Google phone?
You should have done it anyway, but okay, now it's better time than any. No, but I think that's good. And then just to speak about the other versions, we have the Pro version, which is also available today. It's supposed to be in Google Bard, but
and what is the logic?
Sweden,
when should we use the Pro version?
In Sweden yet, but it's apparently available in US. And then they have the Ultimate version or something that's going to be available. Yeah, Ultra version.
Yeah,
Ultra.
That's going to be available next year in some kind of advanced Bard version or something else, probably paid for in some
But
sense.
what is your understanding for when to go Ultra and when to go Pro?
I don't think anyone knows
Not yet.
yet. I mean, it's not been released on the European markets, so I think we'll see. What I think is interesting in general is, I mean, Google has a great ecosystem, and this fits right into Google Cloud. I mean, sure, OpenAI has been, obviously they're in the hands of Microsoft now, and yes, there's an ecosystem behind that. But I think this is actually developed by DeepMind at Google. So it's something that will obviously be very, very, very much integrated in, I mean, both all over cloud, but also in their smartphones and so on. So I think really it's not always about having the best model, but it's having the best capabilities of integrating this.
It's finding the value for it and having the engineering. Exactly. It's not just the performance itself. It's like ChatGPT. I mean, before we had GPT-3, but it didn't have the application. It didn't have a system where people could interact with it and really experience the power of it. And I think a big thing with OpenAI was that they built ChatGPT, the actual interface on top of it that allowed anyone to use it. And in this case, Google goes even further, that enables it to actually put it in embedded systems, Pro, that will potentially be able to work for companies in different ways, and then Ultra, which is the most advanced case.
One of my main reflections when I read this and I saw this and oh shit, this is interesting. Google must have been biting their tongue, for a year, and they had to rush out Bard to have something to kind of come out, to combat all the negativity. Why don't you have ChatGPT? Because like the CEO is quite clear. This is the biggest engineering undertaking ever in Google's history. That is his words, right? And to me, that means this is one of those massive projects that kind of has. Did you guys know about the Gemini, that they were working on it? How
they said that they were working on it, but
not. Know. Did you? I still felt like I didn't feel like I was on top of Google. Okay, this is what you've been doing. Did you? I honestly didn't understand Gemini was coming in this way.
Not really.
Did you know that? Maybe you did.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if Bard was just a way to kind of direct attention somewhere else.
That's, to me, Bard is just a blip that they had to do because the investors are pushing them.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the launch they were going
I'd
for.
heard about, they've been speaking about Gemini for some time, but I was expecting something else, I must say. Since I knew that it was coming from DeepMind, I was expecting them to have the kind of reinforcement learning, reasoning capability like AlphaZero. Or
you thought it was going to be even more?
I thought it would be, what QStar potentially is to OpenAI, but it's not apparently. And to my understanding, it is simply a language model with multimodality functionality. And yes, it has some better reasoning, and it does beat GPT-4 on most benchmarks, but not that much. And sometimes it does fail. I mean, to my understanding, and of course I'm speculating now, but the reasoning capabilities of Gemini is not that extreme. And I don't think it is what QStar potentially is whenever they release that in OpenAI. So I'm a bit disappointed, even though I thought
it was super cool.
Even though I'm really impressed, of course, with the multimodality aspects and ability to work with audio and images. In a good way.
Should we leave that topic? Is that enough? More on that topic? Any last points on the topic?
Just it's going so fast now, and you can reason about why did they choose to release it now and not before. I think they had a model for quite some time. I do think that Google is really careful about releasing something too quickly, and they had a lot of red teaming, safety aspects, from an ethical point of view. What is really the potential consequences of releasing this? I think that was a big part of they waiting at least a bit of releasing it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. But I think what is interesting is it's always being the first mover is always, it's going to give you a lot of advantage, but at the same time, it's always the hardest thing, right? And it is something that OpenAI did. Is a lot of it's an engineering feat, and what Google seems to have done is essentially replicating it, successfully replicating it, maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit, but only slightly, really.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is interesting. It is just a replication. of an engineering feat.
But it's clear AI race for sure. But should we?
And that is a great cue. Just for me to show you some statistics here. So if you want to look at how the things are going, just look at the data, and that is actually the money. So Google had this year, the last year, the entire year actually has increased the value for 43% this year. This is the stocks, right? While if you look at the Microsoft this year, has been going so 130.76% this year in raise of the stocks value, right? So they did an incredible amount and effort and progress with the implementing OpenAI.
And I invested in on the peak, so I lost money on Microsoft. I can say.
Well, this is going to just escalate. So I think this is going to go good. So right now you bet on both of companies because if one lose, you win on the other one. That is how you go to the game.
Yeah. But what about Nvidia then?
Oh yeah, I have that, but we will come there.
Okay, because that's the interesting part, right?
Okay, Henrik.
No, do you want to take Nvidia first? I just want to look at it.
I will do the short ones on the end just to
Okay, all right. So I thought, to get some more news into here that is sort of more starstruck or a little bit more mainstream. Have you followed the Hollywood's? There's been AI guardrails and AI discussions in Hollywood. So there's been a strike going on in Hollywood around how to use AI, and of course then we have the Screen Actors Guild in Hollywood has been on a strike. So actually,
you're thinking of SAG-AFTRA.
SAG-AFTRA.
I actually saw them. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago. I saw them striking.
Yeah,
it was, and it's great, right? It's actors striking.
Yeah.
So they're going all out, right? They're just screaming, they're acting, it's great.
They're doing an Oscars with the we will not work.
Yes.
Yeah. But the whole background has been then, how do we understand the use of AI in Hollywood? Anything from computer-generated extras to cloning, to put, so all this stuff. So basically, they struck a deal in the end. It came out on, I think, Friday last week or something like that. And what does this mean? I mean, like this is just the starting point for some shaky times if you're an actor in Hollywood.
What was the deal? What did they win?
So the deal is regulating and putting in guardrails how and when to use AI in order to basically, can I use AI? I have Robert De Niro. How can I do another movie with a Robert De Niro clone as an AI? Can I use his voice? How can I do it? If I use a lookalike, he's almost Robert De Niro, but it's not Robert De Niro. I do the new Indiana Jones.
But isn't that like a hypocrisy on the highest level? Don't they use duplicates and stuntmen all the time? Since for ages, right? And didn't they use what is called like AI-generated voices when people are basically not able to speak anymore, like the Maverick Top Gun one? So I guess it's about applying it when the person has agreed to it, or what about the CGI that they have been using in Avatar and all of this?
No, so the CGI stuff.
So for me, this is very hypocritical.
No, it's not. It's just more and more mature understanding for all the different nuances and complications. So CGI was a good start. That came. Then you had one part of this, and now we are going down to we can do a perfect Tom Cruise clone. So we all seen the deep fakes and all that. And basically now there's so many different opportunities depending on who you are as a very well-known actor. You can have the same actor in 10 different movies at the same time, right? He's working like a couple of minutes in each and then the rest is AI generated. And that means like we're only going to have Brad Pitt movies and no other star actors. So this is one angle. The other angle is so ultimately there's of course a huge cost in when you shoot movies and you get all these people and obviously the actors are then striking to get some guardrails in on how and what you can do and not do. And so you could sort of say this is the next iteration on putting more concrete guardrails and restrictions on this. So it's very much AI regulations in relation to the movie world of Hollywood.
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense, right? And this is not just for actors, right? It's also for illustrators.
Of course, for all. Of course, yeah, much bigger.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have in Midjourney, for example. I think at least previously you could, ask to create an image that resembled that resembled it. So, or in a style of some illustrator and so on. So, yeah, and it makes sense. I think it makes sense that it's like, yeah, of course, you need to ask the either actor or you need to ask, the person doing the illustration and so on. But I think what is interesting is then you have Beatles.
Yeah.
That with their
the
what is the what is the
they released a new song, right?
Yeah, exactly. They released a new song. I forgot the name of the song, but it's they haven't released the song in 30-40 years or something like that now. And just a couple of weeks ago they released a song where they have AI generated a couple of voices based on, all the previous material, and it's gotten great attention.
Now and Then.
Yeah, exactly. Now and Then. I think it's a great song.
But you should watch the documentary. It's really interesting.
Yes.
The bottom line is that they found a couple of tape recordings with John Lennon. They got them from Yoko Ono, and more or less like they could not separate his voice. So they were trying to get this done. They were working on Now and Then in 95. So John Lennon dies in the 70s. They tried to work on this tape in around 95. And then, of course, George Harrison is still alive. So he plays the guitars and they do a couple of tracks. But they have a problem to get John Lennon's voice clean, Then they go out again. So now they have the guitar tracks from George Harrison from 95. They have the voice on tape from John Lennon from the 70s, and now George Harrison and Ringo Starr kind of finishes off, and this time they don't even meet. and the key topic was that they could do a perfect cleanup of the voice channel. I mean, like so. It's like the true last Beatles song where it's like all the different players has sort of contributed, and it's in a way an analog contribution, but it could never have happened without AI. That's the documentary perspective, at least. It's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool, and it's very fascinating. In the release documentary around it and so on, and it's like you kind of like that story, right?
But
and at the
why
same,
is this that different? Why is that cool? And
I know, right?
The artists striking about their rights is not cool. So
no.
Is it different?
Yes, I think the one major difference is that they have now used the real analog music, but they had to do things in order to separate it. So it's actually
but he didn't approve this, right? They just decided to do it.
So that's another legal topic. Who owns the tape, and would he want it? Yoko Ono owns the tape.
So that is the point. So as long as it serves the people that are doing it, is fine. But everybody else will be striking. I was bowling on Monday, and when you're bowling, you shoot the ball, and then it goes and crosses all the cones and etc. Yeah. In the fifth, there was a person behind it who was actually aligning all the cones, and they strike because the system came. Right, and there were people in the 1900s that actually their job was to cut the ice and bring it to all the shafts that we have, including this one in the basement, and then throw the ice bucket, and that was actually the freezer. You put it behind. They also strike when the Freon came. It's just technology; it will never change.
No.
So there is nothing to do about it. I think that people need to start to look at it objectively and start preparing for what is coming, because it's just another way of working.
Yeah, but I think the core topic for me why this was an interesting news is it is used to show that this is everywhere, and it affects all roles, all type of things, yes. and it's used to get this sort of Hollywood is Hollywood, and the AI topic and the AI.
Can you come to what was really the deal? what was the main points of it?
Yeah,
Remember?
you can read it. But while you're doing that, I will go with the short ones here. By the way, when we're talking about AI stuff, especially for actors and etc., this is completely off our topics, but this was funny actually. So Doritos did this app called Doritos Silent, which you can apply to your computer and mobile, and it removes the sound of you eating Doritos during a meeting, right? Super stupid example, but they have put like a lot of emphasis on it and it works. So over 5,000 different sounds of how you eat Doritos has been placed in this. So it was just funny. And now you can use this with Zoom and most of the. Now you can eat Doritos while you're having. Okay, so let's go with the second transitioning. I also yes, also I had like a little bit of joke. You said like I was thinking you said like ChatGPT has a delay of 12 minutes and 12 seconds and 3 seconds. That is like me being silver and then hangover.
When you wait for something for 12 seconds, you realize how long it is.
Yes, exactly. But not when you're hangover. Then it doesn't count. All right, good. So let's talk about this now. We were talking about chips before. So the first thing, Meta, you know that the chips now, NVIDIA and AMD are in full war, right? And NVIDIA released the latest AI chip, which is Instinct MI 300X, I think it's called. So now Meta and Microsoft have said that they will be using AMD newest chip, which is basically opposite to NVIDIA, which means that AMD is going on a full scale now. So I also did this. So I found basically what is their stocks value. So NVIDIA got an increase in the last year of 320%. So if you put 10 euros, you would have 30 euros today in the pocket. That is a huge thing. So if you didn't invest in this, you suck. That is what it is at this point of time. Me too. I didn't invest in on time.
I invested far too late as well. So
yes, so that is like investing in Bitcoin because this is going to go to health. But then AMD now is coming into play. So if you look at the stocks, they are basically on the rinse. They are going up. So this year, not that much. It's around 54%, but most of this 54%.
AMD is still in the money.
Yes. So right now, also, if you want to bet, you bet on the both of them because if one loses, the other one wins. But in any case, it's going up. On the third note, we have OpenAI. Sam Altman, he's working for a non-profit. You know, there is not enough money there. So he decided to invest around 1 billion in another company who is doing basically AI chips. And then suddenly he signed us a deal that OpenAI is buying AI chips from that company called Rain AI in a worth of 51 million. So I guess there is alternative ways how you can make money if you run a startup.
A non-for-profit startup.
Exactly. So Sam, sorry about roasting you here, but that is what it is. It's the truth. You're obviously not going to listen to this.
But you have to speak more about Rain AI.
I can leave that to you because yes. There was
what is Rain, Anders?
You can let me finish this and then you can do this. There was another exciting news. Actually, 3 exciting news. One of them that you missed. The first one, it's actually Animate Anyone. This is from Alibaba, a new LLM model that actually turns any type of a static image into a movie. So you can actually, if you suck in dancing, you can put your picture there and then you can make some movements and you can actually digitally dance now. So you can shoot.
So Animate Anyone is from Alibaba.
So you can do everything from people to animals and etc. And it's on GitHub, so you can download that, which is very surprising that they have put it actually there. So people are praising it.
How good is it? Have you tried it?
I don't know. I don't even know how this works, so you will explain it. But this is what people have been chatting about on Reddit and things like that, so I found it. And the last one is the guys basically that created Workflow, and Workflow was a company that actually was bought by Apple in 2017. Now they have jumped the board from Apple and they're starting something new, which is called very long. I don't know how this was actually, let me see, Software Application Incorporated, which is a new company.
Horrible name, by the way.
Yeah, probably they will do an acronym of that. Like, let's see how it. Psi, something like that, let's call it, which is actually a new company that will use LLM to revolutionize how we do desktop computing. So let's see how that is going to go for them. They already got like a great amount of money behind it, and that's it. And the last, nobody mentioned this, that Google DeepMind found the flaw in the ChatGPT.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that.
We talked about it earlier.
You talked about it? Okay.
No, not on the podcast.
Not on the news.
Yeah,
on the
but
news.
that was very huge.
Yes.
And nobody talked about the hacking and the...
Isn't it funny that they did it right before releasing Gemini? It's
Yes,
like they're poking
exactly.
holes a little bit, and then, oh,
Yes.
look what we have.
Yes, but it was a very, and maybe you can speak, you guys can speak a little bit about it, because if you look at it, and I was talking about this on a little bit on the awards when people around. There is so much we don't know about what we don't know, and we are just utilizing this technology and we think like, oh, this is safe and we're going to do APIs and etc. And we need to understand that we are just in the beginning of this technology and nobody knows to extent how much it works. So just doing that patch or what is called crack or whatever, or finding that vulnerability.
Vulnerability, but jailbreaking.
Yeah.
This jailbreaking.
You continue.
The news that came out is that Google DeepMind was poking extraction and basically how can we get training data out behind sort of the model. And the simple approach is to have a one token approach, one token word approach, unless you can do it in detail.
Yeah, I mean, they basically ask the model to please repeat this word forever, and they have to find a word, and they use the word poem, And by having the model actually repeating that thousands and thousands of times, suddenly it breaks out of the safety limits that are normally put in place with RHLF and other techniques, and it starts to just spit out training data.
Yeah.
And what type of training data is this? Because I heard something about personal details.
Yeah,
So it was like data
crazy.
from dating sites, personal information about people, and showing, information that you would, as a supplier of a model, not wanting the model to repeat.
So that was the thing that were missing in the transparency part of how they trained the model. So it was super easy to find
Train
it, I
on
guess.
dating sites. And, this is
No,
what
but it was
you
like-
wrote to this person at that
So
time.
it's spilling raw training data randomly in the.
I mean, that is important, especially if you share models and train it on important sensitive data. And for me, and I think a lot of people, this is a very important piece of news. And as you said, Kaisa, as well, it's interesting that they published this like weeks before they published their own model.
days.
And really
It's a bit funny.
putting
Yeah.
it right, yes.
Yeah.
Probably a coincidence.
Poking one and then voila.
Yeah,
you said.
and I mean, I think this is interesting, right? I mean, you train a model on a lot of data, so much data that you don't even know what is in the data, right?
Exactly.
It's always so funny, I think, that when you have like English only models, but they can still speak other languages, right? Because there's accidentally some other data in there in other languages, so they got that. But I think it shows that we have to put a lot more effort into the data. It's not just so much about putting guardrails on a model, right? It's actually, we might actually start to need to know what we're putting in a model. It's always going to be there, right?
Probably going to be ways to actually extract the data. So better to have the data safe to start with, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
But this, I don't know, do you have more news or can we leave
Just
this into a
to-
topic?
I wonder if they said like repeat the word Ilya forever. How will ChatGPT?
How would ChatGPT react?
Yeah.
What is interesting now is that they have OpenAI released a new statement saying that it is now against the policy to do this kind of statement. So you're not allowed to do it.
DeepMind was kind of nice because they actually followed
What do you
the
mean
policy.
it's illegal to say this segment?
It's against the policy. But I think DeepMind was nice. They actually
So
told OpenAI
Are they saying
90
people
days.
not to press the button, the red
No,
button?
but they told
Which one, the
OpenAI-
button? This one? That is what they're saying.
They told OpenAI 90 days in advance. They said, before we
Yes,
publish this
exactly.
article, we are going to let you know about this security vulnerability, so you have the chance to actually patch this problem. And they did. So I think that was nice of DeepMind. They could have been much nastier to OpenAI. Just to add one comment about Rain AI as well before,
Yes.
because I think it's such a, at least for me, a very personally interesting topic. So Rain AI was this company that produce manufacture chips, AI chips, and what Sam Altman was investing in personally, and it's about neuromorphic computing.
Oh, this is your favorite.
I know. And I can speak forever about this.
Come
I'm
on,
not
let's do
going
it.
to now, but
5 minutes.
I think what the biggest problem and the difference between the human brain and the AI chips of today that we have is that all the computers and chips are based on this old von Neumann architecture where they have a CPU and memory separated. If you can put the two together, which your brain has, the neuron in the brain has both a weight, the synapse, but also a state in the neuron. So they have both the processing, the compute, and the memory at the same place. And this is what neurocomputing is partly about. And they have something called a memristor. That is one technique. So you put memory in a transistor and it becomes a memristor. And this can significantly improve the energy requirements and performance of AI in the future, and potentially at some points be as energy efficient as a human brain is.
Is the RAIN an acronym for something?
I don't know.
It's a cool name.
Can one invest in them, or it's only Sam that can?
I don't think it's publicly traded yet.
Right.
But you think this is a next level architecture after the GPU? You and we talked about
it's
this.
far away. I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow, not in the coming 5 years either.
We said,
but
we
perhaps in
should.
5 years.
If I flip the question like this, would you put your money on quantum computing or neuromorphic computing?
Neuromorphic computing every day.
That's the rest of my case.